Funny story, I made a poll out of what I should do for a Halloween special. There was a bit of tense competition, but Wallace and Gromit won. I will be honest with you all, this is a very wise decision. I will be real. As an American, I love Wallace and Gromit. I like the simplistic charm about a cheese enthusiast inventor and his silently expressive dog. It has that balance of being simple and goofy, yet dark and sinister at the same time. I have heard many people talk about how the Penguin or the Terminator dog terrified them as kids. Even if most of their productions are just 30-minute shorts, the tone and cinematography can make them feel like actual movies. However, as usual, it's not the shorts we will be looking at today. Today we are going to look at its feature film, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Now, this movie is how I got into the series when I was younger. This was one of the first few movies I watched as an infantile gremlin. This was not only my claymation introduction, but also my introduction to stop motion in general. Since then, I have watched most of Aardman's films, even Flushed Away despite the fact it was actually all CGI, because animating water in stop motion is an utter complete nightmare. Since it's also Halloween, and it's also a horror parody, it won the poll. We are going to visit this childhood favorite of mine. First, I would like to discuss its production history and release real quick. It is March 2000 and Aardman is about to drop their first film, Chicken Run. They announced that Wallace and Gromit are finally going to get their own movie after they finished the Tortoise and the Hare film, which that got scrapped after issues regarding the script. So they went to work in September 2003. It originally went by the title of Wallace and Gromit: The Great Vegetable Plot, but the market research team asked them to change it. It was slated for November 2004, but then got pushed for October 2005. They went through a lot of story changes, like adding and removing Gwendolyn from A Close Shave into the film, Victor was going to be Lady Tottington's son named Tristram, and many different scenes were cut and were never used. Another problem was the Were-Rabbit itself. You see, there is one big enemy to stop motion that is not water, and that is fur. In order for the fur to look good, they made two different models for the Were-Rabbit, one for standing and one for running. They also used mechanics and sticks on the model so they won't touch the fur too much. Don't even get me started on that transformation sequence, that took a whole year to make. This production was when the cracks started to show for Aardman and DreamWorks' creative differences, the same ones that made the two split after Flushed Away bombed. There were multiple test screenings for different types of audiences, where Nick Park had to change dialogue for the Western version.
Gromit, lad, how's that prize melon of yours coming on? Must be a while since you measured it.
He even stated he was given notes from DreamWorks. This was more for westernization changes, like making Wallace's car more trendy, and even replacing his voice with a celebrity's. Regardless, the movie released on September 4th, 2005 in Australia, and October 7th the same year for other countries. The movie received universal acclaim and even won a majority of the awards they were nominated for, and is also the second highest grossing stop-motion film, getting around $192.6 million worldwide. While it seemed good at the time, but considering what some animated movies make today, it's absolutely nothing. Well, at least they made more money than what was in the budget, and that's what matters, right? With all the history mumbo-jumbo out of the way, let's talk about the movie. Also, here's a spoiler warning for the movie, because I will be going into spoiler territory throughout the video. I suggest waiting until you have watched the movie yourself and coming back later. Now, let's begin with the story. To summarize, Wallace and Gromit now do a pest control service that humanely deals with pests. One day they get a call from Lady Campanula Tottington to deal with a major rabbit infestation, so they drive up there and deal with the problem. However, they also meet her suitor, Lord Victor Courtenay. He would rather shoot down animals rather than humanely disposing of them. That night, he connects the bun bag to his new mind manipulation omatic, which he uses to brainwash the rabbits into disliking vegetables, which obviously goes wrong since he kicked the switch that blew a rabbit into his headset. However, once it was all said and done, it actually worked. This was at the cost of creating a new beast known as the Were-Rat, who devours several of the town's vegetables. This new creature poses a threat to their giant vegetable competition. Victor suggests that he should shoot it down, but Lady Tottington steps in and suggests that the duo should capture it. So it is now up to the duo to hunt down the Were-Rabbit before Victor gets to it. So as you know, this movie is meant to be a spoof of horror flicks. Kinda like how the shorts would do parodies of other types of movies, whether it be heist movies or just the Terminator. Unlike the shorts, Curse of the Were-Rabbit is through and through on the parody angle as opposed to sprinkling the parody for the finale. The monster is a giant rabbit that eats vegetables as opposed to eating humans. Even if the humans aren't in danger, it's the vegetables they're worried about, since it poses a threat to the giant vegetable competition. This is a fun way to subvert a horror movie, as it matches the tone of Wallace and Gromit while still setting high stakes. Even if it's a satire of horror movies, it unironically ends up being an actual good horror movie. Despite its goofy premise, it still retains the same suspenseful mystery that the shorts had, including the big twist of who really is the Were-Rabbit. After Gromit chases the Were-Rabbit back to their house, he finds rabbit footprints. The duo follow to the basement and they find Hutch has gotten bigger and more humanoid. Wallace pieces together that the incident with the rabbit rehabilitation caused Hutch's nature to change and he becomes the Were-Rabbit at night. Realizing this, he presumes they caught the Were-Rabbit and goes to Lady Donington. He leaves Gromit to build a cage for him so he doesn't get out. However, Gromit finds more footprints that lead him upstairs, progressively turning into human feet. This is when he learns the truth. Wallace is the Were-Rabbit. This twist actually makes sense since the movie drops some pretty clever hints throughout and even makes the stakes even higher since now not only Gromit has to stop the beast, but now has to protect Wallace from everyone, including Victor. Enough with all the suspenseful stuff, however. How is the comedy? It isn't a Wallace and Gromit production without its signature comedy. Specifically, aggressively British comedy. I can confidently say that it's a consistently funny movie. There are a ton of well-written jokes like the vicar using cucumbers as a cross only for them to get eaten, the cutaway of the organ-playing lady, and so much more. There are some clever visual gags like Victor mistaking a black rabbit for a toupee.
Man, bro is racist.
How did you get in here?
You know I always sneak in here.
Yeah, I need to add a security system.
Also, why do you look like that?
It's Halloween, and I love using this form.
Okay.
Granted, there are some puns since vegetables are involved, but they acknowledge how corny they are. I did think Kiss My Artichoke was pretty funny though. There was only like 1 or 2 instances of like crude humor in the movie, but since there's so few and far between, I just thought it was okay. The finale of the movie is when all of the elements really come together. They start making more funny subversions of horror movie tropes like the mob. They start pulling out the funnier gags like when the coin-op plane stops mid-chase and they need to put another quarter in. There's even some intensity as a bloodthirsty Victor tries to hunt down Rabbit Wallace, who has come to his senses and showed Lady Donington the truth. Yeah, to summarize, the story not only satirizes horror movies, but also shows why people like horror movies to begin with. However, the plot isn't the only way that it's conveyed. There is also the animation. One of the greatest qualities of Wallace and Gromit is the animation. Like I said before, it uses stop motion, specifically claymation, the general style that Arthur uses. What makes Wallace and Gromit so special is that the cinematography helps elevate the tone of the short. There are also handprints on some of the characters where they had to move. Another reason is that they use a lot of effects to make incredibly engaging sequences. The truck chase from a close shave is an example of this idea where they had to use a lot of green screen. Another good example of these difficultly made sequences is the train chase from the wrong trousers. This is one of the most iconic sequences in the series due to the amount of concentration it took to make a scene like this. So with those in mind, did this carry over to the movie? It absolutely did, and even today, this movie looks good. This is mainly due to the budget being higher than the shorts, but the movie feels a lot more polished as a result. Sure, the shorts have a lot of charm with the handprints all over the characters, however, I just like how clean this movie looks. Even the movements are fluid. Speaking of which, here is the character information. Gromit still has his iconic eyebrow movements that help express what's on his mind, without directly speaking about it. The rabbits move like actual rabbits, and the Were-Rabbit, despite his imposing size, is still just a giant rabbit. It's even better since it's still Wallace, and some of his personality traits are still there through how he expresses himself. However, the real star of the Were-Rabbit's animation is Wallace's transformation into the beast itself. Like mentioned earlier, the whole scene took a full year to make, specifically the foot segment. However, the effort was completely worth it because this is one of the greatest sequences in the entire series. It helps convey that Wallace is transforming into this giant hulking rabbit. Sure, it is nowhere near as graphic as most transformations are, however, there is a bit of scare factor because it seems that Wallace is in pain as he transforms. Then there's the sets. As a movie, they expand the locations from more than just the town in West Wallaby Street. Donington Hall is a prime example as we go through many different points of the hall throughout the movie, especially in the ending dogfight sequence as they fly through the roof and ledges of the hall. As for familiar locales, you have your average town of West Wallaby Street. The latter, however, got a huge glow up. I like that the house has a prep system for when the duo has a night job. It's akin to something like from a cloche when they had a prep sequence for window washing, of all things. With all that said, yeah, the animation here is brilliant. They took what worked with the shorts and elevated it. The influence from this movie really rubbed off on Aardman because the animation for the most recent short, A Matter of Loath and Death, is on the same quality as this movie, which, fun fact, was actually going to be a sequel to this movie, but let's not go on a tangent here. However, that's not all for this movie. Let's talk about the characters. How did Aardman do with bringing the duo to the big screen? Well, what did you expect? They portrayed them exactly how they were supposed to be. Like I said, they're now a humane pest control service. We see that Wallace actually has good intentions for his inventions, however, his impulsiveness and lack of common sense is how his experiment goes awry and gets his were-rabbit curse. We can't mention Wallace without mentioning Hotch. As it turns out that he has become more humanoid, he gains Wallace's personality traits. Sure, he is basically a comedic relief character who spouts out Wallace quotes from the shorts, however, he actually has a purpose throughout the third act of the movie. He serves as an icebreaker for Wallace that he is in fact the Beast, busts Gromit out of a cage, and indirectly suggests to Gromit to use cheese to revive Wallace. As for Gromit, he's pretty much as likable and sympathetic as he is in the shorts. Gromit always felt like the true protagonist of the series, if you know what I mean. Always the one to get Wallace out of situations, and always the one to uncover what other characters are hiding, specifically antagonists. That shines more as he is the one hunting down the were-rabbit, but ends up finding out his owner is the were-rabbit, which gives him a constant drive to protect Wallace while stopping the were-rabbit. This clearly shows how loyal Gromit is to Wallace, always having his back, even if the way he does it leads to Wallace scolding. In the end, Wallace appreciates him and gives him as much love, like he is his own son. However, it's not just the duo, Hutch included, that star in this feature. We still have our two new main characters as well, Lady Carpool Toddington and Victor Quartermain. Starting with the former, Lady Toddington is the rich lady who is a vegetarian and a pacifist. She likes diplomacy and doesn't want any living creature to be harmed. This is actually what I like about her. She isn't the snobby rich person archetype that we see in a lot of media. She actually wants everyone to be happy and not let the destructive methods be the path, which is why she is drawn to Wallace's humane methods as a contrast to her disinterest with Victor's hunting. She is really likable, and it makes me happy that they brought her back in one of the newer advertisements. Speaking of Victor, he is a hunter and the suitor to Lady Toddington. However, it is clear that he only wants her for her money. Made even more obvious when Victor confronts Wallace and projects that onto him.
You think you can pilfer my filly, don't you? You think you can con an innocent woman out of her fortune?
He's pretty much the weakest antagonist of the entire Wallace and Gromit series. While the antagonists were a bit simple in concept, that made them no less threatening, especially with the fact that most of them never spoke a line of dialogue besides some growls and grunts. Victor is just the typical greedy, pompous jerk that is in for the money. However, that doesn't mean he has some actual qualities. He acts as a perfect foil to the duo. When he finds out Wallace is the were-rabbit, he realizes he has an excuse to kill his competition, which actually makes him more threatening as he only has a strive to just kill Wallace. He even has his own dog known as Philip, where he has some really funny moments with Gromit, especially in the ending dogfight sequence. The coin-up playing gag is just comedy gold. There are more than just these 5 or 6 characters. We even have new side characters. Aardman realizes they can't exactly carry a feature-length movie with just 3 to 5 characters like they would with a 30-minute short. So they decided to expand on the standard locations with new side characters. They are all pretty great as they subvert the humble town trope with them all worrying about their vegetables and the competition. The fact that they all turn into an angry mob at the end is also some great stuff. My favorite of these new characters is Chancellor Palpatine, the Vicar. He actually has a purpose in the movie as the churchgoer that warns everyone about the monster. Even his whole scene where he encounters the Were-Rabbit has some good comedy and suspense. I can't cap off the character segment without talking about the voice acting. Peter Sellers reprises his role as Wallace, and this is where his voice actually becomes perfected. I don't mind the deeper voice, it's a pretty chill sounding Wallace. However, I personally like his performance here. It's more energetic and Sellers conveys a lot more emotion here. It makes me sad that he is gone now. May he rest in peace. I would like to note that DreamWorks wanted to replace Salas with a celebrity, like I said before. Nick Park insisted on keeping him but brought in Ray Fiennes and Helena Bonham Carter for the other characters. They voiced Victor Quartermain and Lady Toddington respectively. Both do an excellent job at portraying both characters. Ray Fiennes brings in that pompous yet menacing vibe for Victor, while Helena Bonham Carter brings a sweet and elegant tone for Toddington. The side peeps are also portrayed well, with some examples like Liz Smith as Mrs. Mulch, which, fun fact, she's actually modeled after the voice actor. Peter Kay as PC Macintosh. Get it? Get it? And Nicholas Smith as Chancellor Palpatine. They all do a good job bringing these side characters to life. One more person I'd like to note is Ben Whitehead as Mr. Leaching. He's a prominent voice actor and staff member at Aardman, and ended up becoming the new voice of Wallace for future projects. Well, with the characters finally out of the way, let's take care of that banger soundtrack. Julian Knott, the main composer of the entire Wallace and Gromit series, returns to record music for the movie, with the assistance of Alistair King, Lorna Bell, and Hans Zimmer? So you're telling me the composer for a bunch of these movies also composed for this movie? Wow. Such a small world we live in, isn't it? Well, with this collaboration of the composers, do they make a good OST? Of course they do. There are a lot of tracks that add a lot of whimsy or suspense, which is fitting for the tone of the movie itself. On top of that, it is jam-packed with leitmotifs throughout the movie. Although the main theme of Wallace and Gromit is used for the opening and credits, there are many different character leitmotifs as well. Auntie Pesto has their own main theme used throughout the movie. Lady Toddington's leitmotif is majestic, symbolizing her peaceful and high social status. Victor Quartermain's leitmotif has a slight ominous, but overall mischievous vibe. The last one is what I like to call the Were-Rabbit leitmotif. I call that because it plays whenever the Were-Rabbit comes on screen, or is generally the subject of the scene. It's whimsically menacing and can be portrayed as mysterious as well. There are others in the movie as well, but they aren't exactly tied to a specific character. Some themes are even reused from others, but it's nothing too bad to snuff at. So yeah, overall, a soundtrack that properly uses its leitmotifs. Wow, that was a pretty short segment. It is also our final segment. It's now time to wrap up this review of this very based movie. To conclude, Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit makes an amazing spooky movie. It nails the horror parody angle by comedically subverting tropes while paying respect to them as well. The animation is a step up from the shorts and makes a lot of the sequences fun to watch. The characters, old and new, have a lot of qualities to them regardless of their role. Finally, the soundtrack is pretty bangerish and filled with well-made leitmotifs. If you guys have watched this movie, it's on Netflix, go watch it again. Considering how good this movie turned out, it makes me hope that its sequel next year will be just as good, perhaps even better. Well fellas, I'm heading out. I have some Mario Wonder to attend to. Happy Halloween and good night everybody.